The biggest mistake we have made with From is believing that the town is the mystery. It isn't. The town is only the stage. The real mystery is the cycle. Because after 4 seasons, the same things keep happening in different forms. Children are sacrificed. People are pulled toward the same places. The bottle tree keeps returning. Characters see visions that appear to belong to another time. Julie can move through moments that should already be finished. Jade keeps seeing fragments of people who lived before him. Tabitha is repeatedly drawn toward the children. And every time someone gets close to understanding the truth, the town changes the rules. That is not random. And this is where everything becomes terrifying. From may not be telling us a story about people trying to escape a town. It may be telling us about people who are trapped inside the same story, over and over again. Season 4 doesn't just continue the mystery. It reveals the mechanism behind it. And if that is true, then some of the biggest events from seasons 1, 2, and 3 suddenly mean something completely different. Because what if Boyd was never the beginning of this story? What if Tabitha was never simply another victim? What if Jade's visions aren't hallucinations? And what if Victor has survived for so long because, on some level, he already understands the rules? Look at what the show is actually telling us. From the very beginning, the town has behaved less like a physical location and more like a system. People enter. They become trapped. They discover symbols, trees, tunnels, monsters, visions and strange rules. Then they try to escape. And the moment they get close to an answer, the system produces something new. A new threat. A new vision. A new death. A new mystery. That pattern has existed since season 1. But season 4 gives us the most important piece yet. The characters are beginning to realize that their present lives may not be the first version of this story. Jade's experiences are especially important. For most of the series, Jade looks like the character who is desperately trying to solve a puzzle. But season 4 pushes that idea much further. His visions begin connecting him to people and events that existed long before he arrived. And that changes the question. It is no longer, what is Jade seeing? The question becomes, why was Jade chosen to see it? That distinction is everything. Because if the visions were simply random supernatural images, they would have no reason to repeat. But they do. The same symbols appear. The same locations matter. The same history keeps resurfacing. And Jade's connection to those images begins looking less like discovery and more like memory. But here's what changes everything. Tabitha has a similar connection. She isn't simply searching for a way out. She keeps being pulled toward the children. Toward the bottle tree. Toward the underground spaces. Toward the history buried beneath the town. And eventually, season 4 forces Jade and Tabitha into the same physical location while they attempt to recover the bones of the sacrificed children. That is not just another horror sequence. It is the show bringing 2 sides of the mystery together. Jade represents the people trying to understand the pattern. Tabitha represents the people trying to save the victims trapped inside it. And the children may be the key connecting both. Because what happened to those children appears to be much bigger than a single historical tragedy. It may be the event that created the cycle itself. Think about what the show has repeatedly emphasized. The children are not simply dead. They are still present. They appear. They call out. They influence the living. They remain connected to the locations where the mystery began. That means their deaths were never treated as an ending. Their deaths became part of the system. And this is where it gets darker. What if the monsters aren't the true architects of From's nightmare? What if they are products of the cycle? Season 4 gives us another disturbing piece of evidence. Fatima's transformation. For 3 seasons, the monsters were something that lived outside the humans. They hunted the residents. They entered homes. They killed. They were terrifying because they were separate from us. But season 4 destroys that boundary. Fatima begins moving toward the same kind of existence. And suddenly the question isn't simply why the monsters kill. It is, how are the monsters created? That question connects directly back to the children. Because if the original tragedy created the creatures, then every monster we have watched may be another consequence of the same ancient event. The town doesn't just trap people. It appears to change them. That would explain why the show constantly blurs the line between victim and monster. It would explain why people hear voices. Why people see things. Why some characters become connected to the town in ways others never do. And it would explain something else that has always bothered me. Why does the town need people who are willing to investigate? Why doesn't it simply kill everyone? Because maybe killing everyone is not the objective. Maybe the objective is to keep the story moving. The town needs people to discover things. It needs people to follow the clues. It needs people to open doors. It needs people to enter trees. It needs people to dig into tunnels. It needs people like Jade and Tabitha to keep pulling on the thread. Because every attempt to escape may actually be another step deeper into the cycle. And the Season 4 finale gives us the strongest evidence yet. When the bottle tree is pulled from the ground, everything changes. The earthquake comes. The underground structure becomes unstable. The sky suddenly turns dark. Red lightning tears through the town. The protective system begins collapsing. And Jade and Tabitha become trapped underground. Notice the symbolism. They are trying to remove one of the most important objects connected to escape. And the moment they do, the town reacts violently. That suggests the bottle tree was never simply a magical escape route. It may be part of the mechanism that keeps the entire system stable. That's not the real mystery. The real mystery is what happens when the cycle is disturbed. And Season 4 gives us the answer. The town doesn't simply defend itself. It escalates. The monsters appear. The talismans become vulnerable. People die. Fatima transforms. The residents lose their protection. And Sophia begins collecting the talismans. By the end of the season, Fromville is no longer simply a prison. It has become something much closer to an active battlefield. And standing on opposite sides of that battlefield are two forces. The boy in white. And the man in yellow. That conflict may be the final piece connecting every season. Because if these two figures represent opposing forces inside the same cycle, then the residents aren't merely trying to escape. They are being used. Every character may have a role. Every vision may have a purpose. Every death may move the system forward. And every attempt to break the cycle may create the conditions for the next version of it. Which brings us back to Victor. For decades, Victor has carried memories that nobody else could understand. He remembers the dead. He remembers the trees. He remembers the tunnels. He remembers what the town looked like when almost everyone disappeared. For years, we assumed Victor survived because he was lucky. But what if luck has nothing to do with it? What if Victor survived because the cycle needed a witness? A person who could remember enough to guide the next generation. A person who could preserve fragments of the previous story. A person who could recognize the signs without understanding the entire truth. And suddenly Victor's behavior makes sense in a horrifying way. He doesn't simply avoid the past. He protects himself from remembering it. Because perhaps remembering too much is dangerous. Perhaps the town doesn't want its victims to understand the full pattern. It only gives them enough information to keep moving. Enough clues to continue. Never enough to escape. And this is the detail everyone missed. The characters keep searching for a way out. But almost every major discovery leads them deeper. Into the forest. Into the tunnels. Into the trees. Into the past. Into memories. Into visions. Into the history of the children. The direction is always the same. Down. Backward. Deeper. And if the central theory is correct, that is because the answer has never been outside Fromville. The answer is buried inside the cycle itself. Which means the final season may not be about finding the road home. It may be about discovering who started the cycle, why it continues, and what must happen to finally break it. Because if Jade is remembering, if Tabitha is being pulled toward the children, if Julie can move through the story, if Victor is carrying memories from previous versions, and if the boy in white and the man in yellow are fighting over the direction of the town, then maybe all 4 seasons have been showing us the same story from different angles. We just didn't know we were watching the same story. And if that is true, then the most frightening possibility is still ahead. What if the people trapped in Fromville aren't waiting for someone to save them? What if they are waiting for someone to finally remember what happened the first time? But remembering the past may be exactly what the town is afraid of. Because once we look at From through the idea of a repeating cycle, one strange detail becomes impossible to ignore. The people in this town don't simply discover the mystery. They seem to recreate it. Different people, different generations, different circumstances, but the same patterns, the same symbols, the same children, the same trees, the same underground spaces, the same struggle between hope and despair. And that means the residents may not be ordinary prisoners. They may be participants in a story that has already happened before. Look at Julie. Her ability changes everything. At first, it looks like another supernatural power created by the town. But Season 4 gives us a much darker interpretation. Julie isn't simply seeing the past. She can interact with moments that already happened. That means time inside Fromville does not behave normally. The past isn't completely dead. The future isn't completely fixed. Events can overlap. People can encounter moments that technically shouldn't be accessible. And if time itself has become part of the town's machinery, then the cycle becomes much more dangerous. Because imagine trying to escape a prison where the walls are not made of stone. They are made of time. You can run away from a monster. You can lock a door. You can destroy a building. But how do you escape an event that has already happened? How do you fight something that exists before you arrive? And this is where Julie's role becomes much more important. She may not be the person who breaks the cycle. She may be the person who allows the cycle to continue. Because every time someone interferes with the past, they may actually be creating the future they are trying to prevent. That possibility changes the meaning of almost every supernatural event we've seen. Maybe the town isn't changing history. Maybe it is protecting it. And if that's true, then Julie's greatest danger isn't getting trapped in another time. Her greatest danger is believing she can change what happened. Because what if some of the things she tries to prevent are the very things that caused her present? That would create a perfect closed loop. A person goes back to stop an event. Their interference causes the event. They return to the present. Then someone else discovers the consequences. And eventually another person goes back again. The cycle feeds itself. But there's an even bigger question. Why would the town need a time traveler at all? Why would Julie exist? Because perhaps the cycle requires someone who can move between its different layers. Someone who can carry information from one version of the story into another. And that brings us directly back to Victor. Victor remembers things that happened decades ago. Julie can move through time. Jade sees people from the past. Tabitha is drawn toward the children. These characters appear to be experiencing different pieces of the same phenomenon. Memory, time, history, and sacrifice. They aren't separate mysteries. They are connected. That's what makes the town so terrifying. It doesn't attack everyone in the same way. It identifies what each person is capable of understanding. Then it gives them a different piece. Jade receives symbols. Tabitha receives visions. Julie receives time. Victor receives memories. Boyd receives responsibility. And Fatima receives transformation. Different people. Different symptoms. One system. That may be the real design of Fromville. It doesn't give anyone the whole truth. It gives everyone one piece of the truth. And then watches what happens when those pieces come together. But here's what changes everything. What if the town isn't trying to stop them from solving the mystery? What if it is trying to make sure they solve it in the correct order? Think about how every major discovery happens. Someone finds a clue. That clue creates a question. The question leads to another location. That location reveals another symbol. The symbol triggers another vision. The vision points toward another person. And that person reveals another piece of history. It feels like investigation, but it behaves like a design sequence. Almost like the residents are being guided through a maze. And mazes have one important feature. They are built by someone. That's the disturbing implication. Someone may have designed the path. Someone may know where every clue leads. Someone may know what happens when the residents reach the center. And this is where the man in yellow becomes so important. Because his arrival is not simply another monster introduction. He represents something different. The creatures we've known for years behave like predators. The man in yellow behaves like an intelligence. He doesn't simply hunt. He communicates. He threatens. He knows things. And most importantly, he seems connected to the consequences of forbidden knowledge. That makes his role fundamentally different. He may not be the creator of the town. He may be its warden. The person responsible for making sure nobody reaches the final answer. And if the boy in white represents the opposite force, then we may finally understand their conflict. The boy in white pushes people toward discovery. The man in yellow pushes them toward fear. One encourages movement. The other enforces consequences. One appears to guide. The other appears to punish. But there is something even stranger. Neither side seems completely good. The boy in white has helped people. But his actions have also led them into danger. He pushes people toward places they don't understand. He gives information without explaining the consequences. He saves someone only to place another person in danger. That doesn't look like a traditional hero. It looks like someone who is following a rule. And that distinction matters. Because perhaps the boy in white isn't fighting to save everyone. Perhaps he is fighting to complete the cycle in a different way. Maybe he needs Tabitha. Maybe he needs Jade. Maybe he needs Julie. Maybe he needs the children. And if every person has a specific role, then the question becomes terrifying. Who assigned those roles? The answer may be hidden in the original sacrifice. Because the children are the oldest victims we know. They were sacrificed. Their innocence was exploited. Their deaths created something. And their final moments may have become the foundation of the entire supernatural system. If that is true, then the town's monsters are not the beginning. They are the aftermath. The talismans are not the beginning. They are a defense mechanism. The trees are not the beginning. They are pathways. The visions are not random. They are fragments. And the town itself may not be the prison. It may be the machine built around the original tragedy. That would explain why everything keeps pointing backward. The deeper the residents go, the closer they get to the original event. And that is why the children matter so much. They are not merely asking to be rescued. They may be trying to make someone remember what was done to them. Because perhaps the cycle cannot end until the truth is acknowledged. But here's where the theory becomes even darker. What if the children aren't the only ones trapped? What if every person who dies in Fromville becomes part of the system? Look at how death works in this world. People don't simply disappear. Their stories continue. Their memories remain. Their faces return in visions. Their deaths affect the living. Some even seem to exist as supernatural manifestations. That suggests death may not be an exit. It may be another state of existence inside the town. And if that's true, then the monsters have a terrifying advantage. They don't need to kill everyone. They only need to keep the system populated. The dead become memories. The memories become visions. The visions create decisions. The decisions create new deaths. And those deaths create more memories. A closed loop. A supernatural ecosystem. That is why the phrase getting home may be misleading. Home isn't simply a location. Home represents the end of the cycle. And the town cannot allow that. Because if enough people escape, the entire system collapses. This could explain why the road always brings people back. Why the fallen tree matters. Why the geography seems impossible. Why normal maps don't help. Why roads don't behave like roads. Fromville may not exist in normal space. It may exist in a closed supernatural boundary where physical distance means almost nothing. The characters aren't traveling through a normal forest. They are traveling through a controlled environment. A place where the rules can change. A place where the past can leak into the present. A place where dead people can return as visions. A place where trees can function like doors. A place where dreams can become physical threats. And if dreams are another layer of the system, then Kenny's experiences, Elgin's visions, Julie's time travel, and Jade's hallucinations may all be connected. The town attacks people through reality, then through dreams, then through memory, then through time. It doesn't need to break the walls. It can simply change what the victim believes is real. That may be the town's most powerful weapon. Not the monsters. Not the tunnels. Not the darkness. Confusion. Because as long as the residents don't know which reality they are standing in, they cannot know which rules apply. And that brings us to Boyd. Boyd has spent the entire series trying to create order. Talismans. Rules. Safe houses. Patrols. Plans. Leadership. He believes that if they understand the rules, they can survive. But what if the rules are deliberately incomplete? What if the town allows people to discover enough rules to survive, while hiding the rules that would let them escape? That would make Boyd's greatest strength his greatest weakness. He trusts systems. The town is a system. And the town may be giving him just enough information to keep him playing. But Boyd is beginning to realize something. Every time he thinks he has solved one layer, another appears. Every victory creates a new threat. Every rescue has a price. Every escape attempt produces another mystery. And eventually, even Boyd has to ask the question the audience has been avoiding. What if survival is not the objective? What if the town doesn't care whether they live or die? What if it only cares whether they continue? Because as long as the story continues, the cycle survives. And that may be why the town keeps producing hope. Hope is not the opposite of the horror. Hope may be what keeps the horror alive. Every new clue gives the residents a reason to continue. Every possible escape gives them another reason to search. Every supernatural rescue convinces them that someone, or something, is helping. And that keeps them moving deeper into the machine. This is where the entire series begins to look different. The road isn't just bringing people to the town. The town may be choosing people who are capable of advancing the story. Jade has the mind to investigate. Tabitha has the empathy to follow the children. Julie can interact with time. Victor can remember. Boyd can lead. And Fatimir has now crossed a boundary between human and supernatural. None of that feels accidental anymore. They are pieces. And someone, or something, is assembling them. Which means the final mystery may not be, how do they escape Fromville? It may be, what happens when all the pieces finally remember what they were created to do? Because if the cycle began with a sacrifice, if the children are still trapped inside it, if the monsters are consequences of that original event, if time itself has become part of the prison, And if the residents are unknowingly repeating roles from the past, then there may be only one way to end it. Someone has to break the role they were given. Not survive. Not escape. Not fight. Refuse to play. And if that happens, the town may finally reveal what it has been hiding since the beginning. But what happens when the people inside the cycle finally realize they are part of it? That may be the question From has been building toward since the very first episode. Because if the town is a machine, then the residents are not simply prisoners. They are components. And the most terrifying machine is one that can convince its own components that they are making independent choices. Think about how often the characters believe they had discovered something on their own. Jade follows the symbols. Tabitha follows the children. Victor follows his memories. Julie follows the strange connection between different moments in time. Boyd follows whatever clue might save the people. But every path eventually takes them somewhere the town wants them to go. That is the pattern. And if we accept that pattern, then the entire series becomes a story about controlled discovery. The town doesn't hide every answer. It gives answers. Just enough to make the characters continue. Just enough to create hope. Just enough to make them believe the next clue will finally explain everything. But the next clue always creates another question. That isn't accidental storytelling inside the universe. It may be the universe itself. A trap designed around curiosity. And that's why Jade may be the most dangerous person in Fromville. Not because he is physically powerful. Because he refuses to stop asking questions. The town can handle fear. It can handle violence. It can handle people trying to escape. But curiosity is different. Curiosity connects the pieces. And once the pieces connect, the illusion begins to collapse. That's why Jade's visions matter so much. They are not merely supernatural attacks. They may be fragments of the original architecture. Every symbol is a piece of information. Every apparition is a message. Every repeated image is another crack in the wall. And the more Jade sees, the less likely it becomes that these visions are random. They are forming a language. A language the town has been speaking since before Jade arrived. And maybe the reason nobody understood it before is because nobody had enough pieces. Jade does. Tabitha does. Victor does. Julie does. Together, they may finally have enough information to reconstruct the original event. And that is exactly what the town cannot allow. Because if they discover what really happened to the children, they may discover something even more important. Why the cycle was created. And that is the real secret. Not how the monsters work. Not how the talismans work. Not even how the trees work. Why? Why does this place exist? Why does it bring strangers here? Why does it keep them alive? Why does it show them the past? Why does it punish them when they get too close? The answer may be that the town isn't simply feeding on fear. It is feeding on unfinished stories. The children died without justice. The people trapped here die without escape. The survivors continue without understanding. Everything remains unresolved. And perhaps unresolved suffering is exactly what gives the town its power. That would explain the strange relationship between memory and death. The dead refuse to disappear because their story isn't finished. The living can't move on because they don't know the truth. And the town exists in the space between those two conditions. A place where nothing is allowed to end. That would make the bottle tree far more important than a simple escape device. Trees are everywhere in From. But the bottle tree is different. It carries messages. Numbers. Connections. Information. People have tried to understand what those numbers mean. But perhaps we have been looking at them as a code when they are actually a record. A record of moments. A record of people. A record of the cycle. Maybe every bottle represents an event that has happened before. And if that is true, then the tree isn't showing the residents where to go. It is showing them what has already happened. That changes the meaning of the entire escape theory. The bottle tree may not be a door. It may be an archive. A supernatural memory bank. A place where the town stores pieces of its previous cycles. And if the numbers correspond to dates, years, or events, then someone has been recording this nightmare for a very long time. Which raises an even more dangerous question. Who has been doing the recording? Victor? Someone before Victor? The boy in white? Or the town itself? Because if the tree existed before the current residents arrived, then someone knew this would happen again. Someone expected another group to come. Someone knew another cycle would begin. And that means the people arriving in Fromville may not be random victims. They may be replacements. One group disappears. Another group arrives. The roles are filled again. The story continues. That would explain why the town always seems strangely prepared. There are houses. There are supplies. There are established locations. There are rules. There are talismans. There are tunnels. There are monsters. Everything is already waiting. Like a stage before the actors arrive. And once the actors enter, the performance begins. But every performance needs roles. And the roles may be older than the people playing them. This is where the character parallels become important. Boyd becomes the protector. Tabitha becomes the seeker. Jade becomes the investigator. Victor becomes the memory keeper. Julie becomes the traveler. The children become the victims. And the man in yellow becomes the force that punishes those who get too close to the truth. If these roles existed before the current residents, then the people may not be chosen because of who they are. They may be chosen because they fit a role. That would explain something that has always felt strange about the town. Some characters seem connected to it almost immediately. Others remain relatively untouched. Why? Because not everyone is equally important to the cycle. The town may need specific personalities, specific fears, specific relationships, specific people willing to make specific choices. And once those people are inside, the pressure begins. The town doesn't have to control them directly. It only needs to create situations where they make predictable decisions. Put someone in danger. Boyd will try to save them. Show Tabitha the children. She will follow. Give Jade a symbol. He will investigate. Give Victor a memory. He will try to understand. Give Julie a connection to time. She will attempt to change it. The town doesn't need puppets. It needs predictable humans. And that is far more frightening. Because it means free will may still exist. But the environment is designed to manipulate it. And this is where the man in yellow becomes terrifying. If he represents the system's enforcement mechanism, then his real power isn't killing people. It's knowing what people will do. He doesn't need to chase everyone. He can wait. Because eventually, curiosity, guilt, love, fear, or desperation will bring them exactly where he wants them. That could explain why knowledge has such a dangerous price in Fromville. Every time someone learns something important, the town responds. Not because knowledge itself is forbidden. Because knowledge changes behavior. And changed behavior threatens the cycle. The town can survive violence. It can survive rebellion. But if someone discovers the correct sequence of events, the entire structure could collapse. That's why the final reveal may have nothing to do with defeating the monsters. The monsters may be symptoms. The real enemy may be the cycle itself. And you cannot kill a cycle. You have to break it. But breaking it may require something much more painful than killing a monster. It may require sacrificing the identity the town gave you. Boyd would have to stop being the man who saves everyone. Tabitha would have to stop following every supernatural message. Jade would have to stop believing every mystery has an answer waiting for him. Victor would have to remember the truth instead of protecting himself from it. Julie would have to accept that some moments cannot be changed. And the children may need someone to do the one thing nobody has successfully done before. Remember them. Not as monsters. Not as visions. Not as supernatural symbols. As children. Because perhaps the original tragedy continues because the victims were turned into an event instead of being remembered as people. And that may be why the town keeps repeating itself. The story was never properly ended. It was buried. And buried stories don't disappear. They return. Again. And again. And again. Until someone finally confronts them. That may be the true purpose of every major character in From. Not to escape. To remember. And when we look at the seasons this way, everything begins connecting. Season 1 introduced the prison. Season 2 introduced the deeper supernatural rules. Season 3 connected the present to the ancient tragedy. Season 4 connected the characters to the cycle itself. The progression is not random. The mystery is moving backward. From the monsters, to the tunnels, to the children, to the sacrifice, to the people who may have existed before, and finally toward the force that created the entire system. That's why the final answer may be older than Fromville itself. The town may simply be the latest version. The current residents may simply be the latest players. And the monsters may simply be the latest consequences. But if that is true, then the biggest question of all remains unanswered. Who started the first cycle? Was it a person? A group? A supernatural entity? Was the sacrifice an attempt to gain immortality? Was the town created deliberately? Or did something go horribly wrong? And perhaps the man in yellow knows. Perhaps the boy in white knows. Perhaps Victor has seen the answer but forgotten it. Perhaps Jade is getting closer. And perhaps Tabitha has already been there before. Because there is one final possibility we cannot ignore. What if the people who are currently trying to break the cycle have already tried before? What if Jade has existed in another form? What if Tabitha has been connected to the children before? What if Victor isn't simply remembering another time? What if he is remembering another version of them? That would mean the greatest twist in From isn't that the characters are trapped. It's that some of them may have been here before. They just don't remember. And if the cycle works through memory, then forgetting is not a side effect. Forgetting is the prison. That may explain why the town survives. Every cycle begins with people who don't remember the previous one. They arrive believing they are strangers. They investigate. They suffer. They discover clues. They repeat old mistakes. And eventually, someone gets close enough to remember. That's when the system fights back. Because memory is the one thing the town cannot control forever. And now the residents are closer than ever. Jade has the symbols. Tabitha has the children. Julie has the timeline. Victor has the memories. Boyd has the people. And the man in yellow has finally stepped into the open. The pieces are no longer scattered. They are coming together. Which means the next stage of the story may be completely different. The question is no longer whether the residents will discover the truth. They are already discovering it. The question is what the truth will do to them. Because once you realize that your life may be part of a story written before you arrived, once you realize the people around you may have played these roles before, once you realize the town may have been waiting for you, there's only one thing left to ask. If this is not the first time they have tried to escape, how many times have they already failed? And if the answer is more than once, then the most terrifying possibility is this: maybe we are not watching the final cycle. Maybe we are watching the cycle that finally gets close enough to remember. And something tells me, the town has been waiting for that moment.